Okay, our next speaker is Todd Milne. Todd is the Safety, Health, Environment and Quality Manager at Nyrstar. He's been with Nyrstar in this role around 3 years, and before then worked in a number of other environment and management capacity roles for around 5 years previously to this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. So I wasn't sure what to present on today, so I thought I'd put together a bit of a broad, quick overview or tour of the hazards and risks associated with our workplace. When Vicky started talking earlier today, I thought, well, she talked about high-risk industries and how the focus of regulators is going to move towards high-risk industries. And I thought, well, what have I done here? Created a presentation that's actually invited the eye of the regulator. And then you talked about targeted industries. And I thought, well, I'm certainly going to be targeted after this. No, I don't think so at all, but we'll see where we go. I like to think that rather than be a high-risk industry, we're trying to work towards, acknowledge that we are a high-hazard industry, but we're working further and further away from being a high-risk industry. A subtle but important difference. Okay, so as I said, I just want to give you a bit of an overview. It's such a cosy little audience. Feel free to jump in and ask me any questions as we go. And you guys should swing around because it's largely a slideshow. So I'm starting with a shock and awe tour of the hazards and challenges of the Nyrstar smelter. So that's, for anyone that's not familiar, that's the zinc works in Hobart. And I am a father, so I'm allowed to make cheesy jokes like or. In case anyone didn't pick it up, I'm just making it clear. Or. Okay, so we have a range of risks associated with the work that we do on site every day. We've got a few categories that we treat within Nyrstar as our critical risk management processes. We call them the critical 6. One of them is lifting. So you can see we do a lot of lifting. We do a lot of, we've got about 160 fixed cranes in use every day around the site. We've probably got at least 4 to 5 mobile cranes every day on site. Major projects involve major lifting, and they involve major lifting in and amongst a hell of a lot of other high hazard infrastructure. So lifting's a big one for us. I'm not going to talk about, at this stage, the processes we've got in place to manage any of this stuff. I'm just sort of giving you an overview of hazards, really. Working at heights. Speaking of lifting, does this have a... No, yes, it does. Speaking of lifting and working at heights together, you can see these guys in a man box here. This was a project that we did last year, and we had to lift an extremely large reactor tank over the middle of the operating plant in order to get the tank from one side of the plant to the other. We had to do a mid-air exchange of cranes, so we had one crane at one point of the site, another crane at the other point of the site. We had a third crane with guys in a man box off it. One crane lifted it up, the guys in the man box hooked up the lift to the next crane while it took the load and moved it across. It was pretty spectacular to watch. But as you can see, they're pretty high-risk tasks, plenty of hazards around in doing an activity like that. We also have lots of areas where you need to work in harnesses and things like that, but when we talk about work at heights, we're not only talking about where you're harnessing onto things, we're talking about the range of elevated working areas across our site. So this is a good confusing shot of the middle of the site, but in amongst that, every little stairway, every little walkway, every little platform, to get in amongst and work within our plant, we've got huge numbers of elevated areas and multi-level environments, which presents a huge range of hazards and challenges. And maintaining those elevated walkways and grid mesh walkways in an environment where you've got high acidity is an ongoing and constant challenge. Mobile equipment. We've got all kinds of mobile equipment. As I said, we've got mobile cranes, we've got heavy haulage. Shows an incident from our concentrate storage shed from a couple of years ago when we had a Moxie truck's tail go over when the tipper went up. We've got areas such as our casting department where we've got constant forklifts carting stacks of zinc back and forth between the weighers, between the trucks that take them out of the site. And I've just included this slide here, this spaghetti diagram that we did this year, and it's amazing how much we can, with a little bit of focus and not much money, actually improve the mobile equipment and pedestrian separation. In this case, we mapped out the movements of a forklift during a shift or during an hour, I think this one actually was. Each red line for every time a fork moved that way. We played after that in the following weeks with the location of our scales and where we were storing the zinc that came off the casting machines. And by moving a few things around, I hope you can make that out, we've vastly reduced the vehicle movements. In and amongst that floor area, there's also a lot of operators working as well. So because of the layout of our plant, there's a lot of interaction between pedestrians and mobile equipment. In our electrolysis department, we still use a thing called a push tractor, which is a modified forklift without the tines, and it pushes these unbraked trolleys of zinc around the department. And in amongst them, we've got operators actually lifting the cathode zinc out of baths and into those. That's largely a remnant of the 100-year-old plant that we still operate in that section of the plant. And in actually total 10 years across environment and safety within Nyrstar, we've not had a serious incident relating to mobile equipment in that area, which is really a boon to the culture and the care that's taken up there, given the plant and the layout of it. Isolations and lockout, that's one of our zinc stacking machines, comes off the zinc casting machine and the robot stacks it. We've got huge amounts of heavy equipment, machinery, so obviously isolations and lockout is a critical process for us. If you look back years ago, prior to heavy industry and manufacturing having good isolations processes, it was a major killer across industry. We've got a really strong isolations process. This photo is this morning. We've got a shutdown at the moment. You can see along there's about, I think, 12 or 13 red isolation lock boxes where everyone's locked onto, another stack of our yellow electrical isolations lockbox, and this guy's running the permit hut to issue all the isolations permits for that work that was going on this morning. Confined space entry. Last time I looked, we had, hang on, I did have some notes here. We had around 350 confined spaces on our register of confined spaces for the site, all of which have detailed rescue plans, preparation procedures before entry and that kind of thing. And work in confined spaces is a day-to-day event, from going into pipes, gas ducts, tanks, etc., etc. Contractor management's a big one. It's the last one I think I've got on yet, what we call our critical six. I think we do about 800,000 working hours per year on site for employees. We do about 500,000 working hours for contractors. So it's a major challenge for us, given that we've got very detailed safety management system, very, at times, complex safety processes due to the level of hazard that we have across the site. We need to bring contractors on, and we need to be able to embed them and incorporate their safety management systems, but also ensure that they actually work within ours. So that's a big challenge. When we have a shutdown like this picture is of, we've probably got 200 contractors on site on a day. So it's a big challenge. So that was our critical six, and they're around work practices. But wait, there's more. We've got a range of physical, chemical, human hazards as well, which I'll whip through a few of as well. Electrical risk. Some of you probably know about 10% of Tasmania's electricity goes into the zinc works, and 90% or more of that goes into what we call our electrolysis department, where electrowinning occurs, and that's where zinc is electroplated onto aluminium cathodes. This room hasn't changed much in 100 years. There's a little bit of automation there, but that's the building in 1938. I could take the same photo today and it would look pretty well the same in terms of the roof structure. I'm told it's the longest or the largest wooden structure in the Southern Hemisphere. It's 350 metres long, and construction started in 1916. It started operating in 1917, and we're still operating it today. Can everyone hear? Yeah. It's an ongoing source of massive amounts of maintenance to keep that building and that process going, but we still operate it almost as efficiently as any new zinc plant around the world, any new electrolysis plant. Having said that, we've got electrical risk there. This guy there, if you walked over to him and you were holding an earth in your other hand and you touched him, you would get 700 volts and 45,000 amps flowing through you. So he's live in that environment. If you look up at the structure up here, that's all earth. All of the columns insulated, all of the gantry cranes that are being used here insulated, but everyone working in the room there is live at 700 volts with 45,000 amps running through the cells. So it's a hugely high-risk workplace, and we need really strong, very strict controls to manage that and prevent electric shock. As well as that, of course, we've got huge amounts of other electrical infrastructure around the site to power the thousands of pumps and things like that. Heat and molten metal. So the first stage of our process, we bring what we call the zinc concentrate into the site. That's a milled zinc sulfide ore that comes to us from mines around the world. That's roasted in our furnaces at 900 degrees, and you can see a guy reaching into the boiler there or poking into the boiler there, so that's 900 degrees in there. 2 steps further through the process, we're then melting and casting the cathode zinc. The hazards associated with molten metal are huge. Water or moisture and molten metal don't mix. They very quickly become explosions of metal. So again, strict controls to manage that. Heat, electricity, chemicals, we've got acid. So we make about 270, 280,000 tonnes of zinc a year at the plant in Hobart. And that's what we're known for. We also make about 400,000 tonnes of sulfuric acid. So when we put that concentrate that I talked about into the roasters and burn it at 900 degrees, the sulfur dioxide burns off, and that goes into an acid plant where we produce product sulfuric acid, which usually is sold into the Australian market for fertiliser production. But that's a lot of acid, and acid's another significant chemical hazard that needs to be managed, obviously, with strict procedures, PPE, etc., etc. Infrastructure that can tolerate the strength of acid. We've got them all. Heavy metals. I love that. I just stole that off the net this morning. When you get a zinc concentrate in, it is around 55% zinc, 30% sulfur, 7% iron, 3% lead, of course, which is a heavy metal, and 5% other. If you look at the list on the other side, other comprises a range of other nasties. We get arsenic, we get mercury, we get thallium. Thallium's not there, but we do get thallium in the mix. So a huge range of chemical exposures that we need to manage and prevent people being actually exposed to. Then there's people. Took this one this morning too. No, I didn't take this one this morning, but I am pretty sure that these guys are still on the plant. That's one of our challenges, people, and I guess the age of our workforce. So as a quick age profile, 82 employees are under 35 only out of our 500 odd, 480 employees that we have. 271 of them between 35 and 54, and 133 over 55. We've got plenty over 65 even. So we've got an ageing workforce. If you look at the gender balance graph there, clearly we don't have much balance at all. I'd love to see more. In amongst that ageing workforce, you'll probably find that in operations, so the guys doing a lot of the physical work, that would be skewed even higher to the older age group as well. Our operators are certainly an ageing workforce. Our average tenure, I think, still is around 17 years, so we have very low turnover on site. So you can see a guy standing on top of one of our electrolysis baths there. We've tried to eliminate this task. It's called manganese digging, manganese deposits on the bottom of the electrolysis baths, and we have a vacuum system that does that, but at times it can't keep up or it can't get all of the manganese out of the cells, and so people get up and they dig them out. That's a big, heavy shovel that guy's using. So we still have a reasonable amount of manual work on site. In an ageing workforce, I just threw this graph up at the bottom. This was a bit of an analysis of injuries from last year and the mechanisms for injury. You can see muscular stress, musculoskeletal injury was certainly the biggest source of that, and those statistics don't actually capture any injuries that have been categorised as occupational illnesses. They're injuries that have been a one-off tweak. We seem to have a particular issue with knees going, both during physical work, but actually more often than not walking along, and there we have a recordable injury. That's a snapshot of the risk. Now I'm going to give you a snapshot of what we do about it quickly, without going into great detail. So as an organisation, we've got 4 key drivers to try and maintain or continue to improve our safety and health performance. Maintaining a robust health and safety management system, safety culture, fatality prevention program, key risks, and keeping people fit for work and for life. Health and safety management system I'm not going to talk about because I'll probably put you to sleep. It's after lunch. Nevertheless, needless to say, we have one. We've got lots of policies and procedures, and I think it fits together pretty well. But that's all I'll say on that matter. We've had a strong focus for over a few years on culture, and we often ram home the Bradley model, and this is my modified version of the Bradley model that I use to talk to teams to all the time. And some of you might be familiar with the Bradley model of safety professionals. We basically list 4 categories: reactive, and this is how I describe it to the guys in the field. Reactive is where we came from, and I don't think we have many people at all in this state of mind anymore at Nyrstar. The quote from the reactive operator is they need to make the place safe. I want to avoid having a safety breach and getting a warning. You move through that stage onto dependent, where the organisation starts to put in place rules and procedures, they have discipline, and there is some commitment from management to provide a safer workplace. Yeah, we do the risk assessments, we have to. We've got to get the right permit, the boss does an audit. If we get caught out, we're going to be in the, Moving from dependent, and it's a necessary pathway through your journey, your safety culture journey, to independent. And we put a lot of work into this over the last 7 years or so, independence. That's where people start to value the systems that you put in place, start to live it and believe it for their own safety. There are a lot of hazards around here. You'd be crazy not to use the safety systems. I want to get home tonight, It's a good place to be, but there's a better place to be, interdependent. And that's where we've focused even more over the last couple of years. I look out for myself, we look out for each other as a team. We know about error traps and look out for them every day. So if I were to draw a graph for my opinion of where we sit as an organisation, I would draw a distribution that sort of comes up here. We have a tail of a couple of people down here, unfortunately, very, very few. We still have a reasonable number here. We have most of the site here, and then we have a few teams that are absolutely fantastic. They have their toolbox meetings and they're not going through the motions. They're genuine, they're looking out for each other every day. So we're continuing to push the workforce through that journey. How do we do that? A range of tools. We're big on the visual felt leadership stuff. We've got an observation program and a little app for our support management, line management personnel to get out and do observations on jobs around the plant. We train people on how to do that constructively. We have had a better, and we are revitalising at the moment, our intervention program, and that really, excuse me, that needs constant reinforcement to keep people. Everyone at Nyrstar will be able to tell you what an intervention is. It's when you see an unsafe act or see something and you go up and you say, hey, that doesn't look quite right, blah, blah, blah. Can we do it a better way? Not everyone can do it well. And if you don't constantly reinforce and train people to actually do that constructively, it does drop away. And so that's what we're focusing on in Q4 this year, actually, is to start to train people in how to constructively go up to someone so that they don't seem like a policeman. They do it. G'day, mate. I was just walking past and I noticed, are you meant to have the goggles on there, or is there some reason why not? Constructive questions rather than, mate, you're not wearing your glasses, and then the response is good. And when someone gets a good response, they're more likely to go out and do it again, and vice versa. That person who was intervened upon is more likely to do it. We've got a reasonably good culture, but as I said, it's really about ramming it home. Human performance was a behavioural program we've run the site through over the last couple of years, and it's fantastic. It steps beyond intervention on unsafe acts, and we're actually encouraging proactive intervention. So looking out for error traps. We talk about error traps in toolbox meetings. The guy standing there in the middle of the plant, scratching his head, classic error trap. Go up and ask him what's going on, what's wrong. He's suddenly in what we call knowledge-based mode. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. He's going to start trying to problem solve, and that, for us, is an error trap. It's you're 10 times more likely to have an incident when you start trying to troubleshoot. At that point, our advice is stop and seek out, whether it's more information, whether it's the procedure, whether it's other people to bounce ideas off. That's when you jump in. So looking out for those proactive error traps. We encourage conversations about outside of work at Toolbox. The guy that had the argument with his missus the night before, his mind is somewhere else, is not on the job. It's up to the team to look out for him. We've got a long way to go to fully embed that, but we're working on it. So jumping back, where were we? I might go back to that again. The Critical Incident Prevention Program. I think I've frozen it up, skipping through slides here. Critical incident prevention program is really just our approach to risk management. It's looking at our critical risks. Some of you guys are probably well and truly familiar with, Chapter 7 of the Work Health and Safety Regs. We're actually a major hazard facility. And that requires us to do detailed risk assessments on Schedule 15 chemicals, which is a lot of the nastier chemicals that we've got around the site. Things like chlorine gas, cadmium byproducts have had us classified as a major hazard facility. So we do detailed risk assessments and work on risk mitigation programs to actually get that risk level down. That all contributes to our fatality prevention program, as well as other risk assessments. It's not just the major hazard facility ones, it's the things like I talked about mobile equipment interactions. We've got a constant focus on updating our mobile equipment pedestrian interactions in some of the areas of the plant and just continually tweaking the plant to try and lower that risk profile. Lastly, I think, coming back to that ageing workforce, we run a range of fit for work, fit for life programs. I'm wearing my Nyrstar subsidised Fitbit, whatever it's called, watch. We encourage competition across the site. Last year we had 200 people participate in our Fit for Life program, which was subsidised Fitbits and a 100-day program of challenge for people that got the most steps and had the biggest waist circumference reduction. And there wasn't a single person out of that 200 that didn't see an improvement in one of the indicators that we measured at the start of the program. So we measured blood pressure, waist circumference, all that. It was a fantastic success, and we're rerunning it at the moment, hence me wearing the watch. We have medical surveillance. In the last 18 months, we've gone from, I guess, ticking a box in doing medical surveillance, which has been a program that's run for many, many years on site, to really getting some value out of it. It's not just you go for your doctor's checkup, that information gets filed and you go back to work. Now we've got a very simple traffic light approach. If there's an indicator that's meaning that may become limited in your capacity to fulfil your role in the future, well, we can intervene and we can get an exercise program. We can try and change some lifestyle habits to get people better able to complete their job long term. And that's all the more important when we've got that ageing workforce. Exposure monitoring and biological monitoring. Of course, I've talked about the hazards we've got on site. We've got detailed exposure assessment programs across the site. Yes?
I just want to go regarding medical surveillance.
Yes.
I'm really pleased to hear about that. What happens when you come across someone that, whether due to aging or previous injury, for instance, say you might have bad neck?
Yep.
You mentioned all these complaints, and they have to another person to various steps for each platform. If that's not painful, and with an Asian workforce or the medical conditions that are pretty much better, what the options?
Okay, so out of the medical assessment, we'll get we'll either do the physical and functional assessment there and then, or we'll get further work done to understand, I guess, what the person's capability is. We can get support. We'll send people to physiotherapy so that they can start to improve their health and improve their capacity. But obviously also we can put in place job restrictions. So if they're physically unable to continue to do that job, then we need to actually put those restrictions, look for other work, and look at any option we can. Unfortunately, it's a really challenging thing to do. We don't have endless desk jobs that we can move operators that are starting to get unable to do their roles anymore into. So it is quite a challenge, but we're getting better at how we manage that all the time. Yeah. I just threw in this performance quickly. We've had a great few years. Our lost time injury rate, these are all our injury rates as a function of million hours worked on site, has come down over the last 6 or 7 years substantially. Our recordable injury rate, which makes up all of our lost times, all of our restricted work and all of our medical treatment injuries, have all come down very substantially over the last 5 or 6 years, or 6 or 7 years, I should say. And our all injury rate, which we do have a very strong injury reporting culture on site. If you have a paper cut, you'll go to first aid and you'll get it reported. There's absolutely nothing. Sometimes, as much as I'm the guy out there promoting everyone to report them, sometimes I shake my head and chuckle about the injuries that we get reported. We had a few months ago someone come down who reported, I think I stabbed my finger with a bit of broken glass when I was cleaning up a test tube in the lab, and the first aid guys had written on the report that they had looked at the injury with a magnifying glass and they can find no evidence of it. Nevertheless, that's just a statement on our culture. It's not a bad thing, but we do report a lot of basically any injury that happens. We've brought that down greatly, but as you can see, the last year and a half or so, we've really plateaued. And in the last couple of months, actually, we've even had a couple of minor, low consequence, but annoying recordable injuries. Another knee alighting from a forklift. So we need to do some more work to try and continue this trend, because I don't like that plateau. I want it to keep going down. And ultimately, whilst this is, I think, a really good news story, we've had fantastic results, it's nowhere near good enough. There's still too many people getting hurt. Last slide. Damn, I can't go back now. Yes, I can. That period of really significant reduction over the last few years, one of the big drivers was from moving from just reporting on our lag indicators to really pushing the lead indicators. So our hazard reporting in terms of hazards around the plant, unsafe acts, things like that, we focused on and we pushed up the numbers. And you can see the inverse correlation between the proactive measures that we put in place and the actual numbers of injuries we're having on site. So we track unsafe act rate, near miss rate, unsafe condition rate, and they're all calculated as a proportion of the actual incidents that occur on site. But we're reporting 400 to 600 hazards a month on site. As soon as we take our foot off the accelerator, we see a reverse in the injuries. So if you look here, we had a reduction in hazard reports because we just stopped the focus a little bit or eased the focus a little bit. Straight away, we saw an increase. And we've seen that consistently when you look at shorter time spans. It's quite amazing. So it's something we need to continue focusing on. I think I've probably spoken long enough, huh? That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you.